This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles.
This episode brought to you by Prize Picks, largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code CLNS. Get $50 instantly when you play $5. Let's jump right into it, Greg. We have a lot to cover. I want to look at the top 5 deals from the Patriots over the past 48 to 72 hours in guaranteed money. We begin with Milton Williams, $26 million a year, $63 million guaranteed. I guess they wrestled him from Carolina, if you believe some of the storyline out there yesterday. Your thoughts on that deal?
Couple things. Number one, just in the way that the Patriots do business, I would say this was a departure from what they do. I mean, this was basically the Calvin Ridley type situation last year, even though that's different, because I don't think Ridley ever wanted to leave the South. So this was different. But they were competing with other teams and they went over the top. They paid a lot. I mean, this is a lot of money for this player. I mean, he is now, I think, the highest paid player on the Patriots. He is number 3 among defensive tackles in the NFL behind Chris Jones and Christian Wilkins. This is for a guy who has never really been a starter. He's been a part-time player. This is a guy that this is the only guy so far that they brought in that there are no known connections to Milton Williams between the coaching staff, the front office staff. There's none of that. This is really them flying blind and putting a lot of eggs in the Milton Williams basket. Now, I will say a couple of things about how he fits. Number one, I've been watching more Titans defensive film when Vrabel was there. This is basically Vrabel's new Jeffrey Simmons. He basically looked at it. Christian Barmore is a good player. He's just a little bit different. Plus, you don't know what his future is with the blood clots and things like that. They had basically, if you say you got to have the quarterback on offense, for Vrabel's defense, you got to have the 3 technique that can disrupt the middle of the lineup. This is what Jeffrey Simmons does. I'm not saying he's going to be Jeffrey Simmons. That's what they're obviously envisioning him with what they're paying him. But this is when Vrabel's starting his defense, he has to have this guy up front. He is the whole key to everything that they do on defense, so they overpaid for it. As far as Milton Williams and the risk that's associated with this, I have talked to a lot of people in the last 24 hours. Basically when you're a team and you go into this and you don't have a connection to a player, you go back to your pre-draft evaluation. And from everyone that I've talked to, Milton Williams is absolutely clean everywhere. In the building, off the field, this guy is an unbelievable worker. You don't have to put your foot up his butt to get him to work. He has been underrated his whole life. Coming out of Central Florida, he went to Louisiana Tech. A lot of big schools bypassed him. He was overlooked. He gets to the Eagles. He was overlooked. He watched them bring in Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, and he had to, be happy with his role and flourish in his role. And he got better every year. Incredible work ethic. He's a guy who doesn't like to talk a lot. He likes to let his play speak for him. Teammates love him. Great in the room. So, when you're looking at Vrabel putting his imprint and starting his program, football character is huge. And from what I could tell, Milton Williams checks all those boxes. Now, I will say there's the unknown. He was underrated his entire career, so it was easy for him to have a chip on his shoulder. Is that going to continue now that he is a highly paid player? Is he going to continue to have the best work ethic on the team as one of the highest price players, or the highest paid player on the team? These are all questions that are unanswered. Now, along with the playing time, he's never been that guy before. He's never been, benefited from Jalen Carter getting a lot of double teams. How is he going to handle that? But, when you're in the position that the Patriots are, it's very rare that a player like this gets to free agency. He's young. He's not yet 26. So for them, they thought it was reasonable, the risk, and I would agree with them.
All right, let's move on to the next one. Carlton Davis. Now, I know it's been reported as a 3-year, $60 million deal. When you look at the details, it's actually $18 million a year, not $20 million a year. When you look at the details, it's really a 2-year contract versus a 3-year contract. But Carlton Davis gets $34.5 million guaranteed, Greg, from the Patriots.
Yeah, this one's interesting. That it's not $20 million, I guess, makes me feel a little bit better about it. I mean, I like Carlton Davis. I like the player. I like the profile. He's physical. He's not afraid to risk. Sometimes he gets burnt. Ability to play man coverage, which I think was important to the Patriots. Pairing him with Christian Gonzalez, you're obviously, in my opinion, drastically upgrading what you had last year. Of course, Jonathan Jones was beat up almost the entire year. He's a free agent. I would have gone in other directions. I would have gone whether it was Travarius Ward or DJ Reed. Like, I like those guys a little bit better. But and one thing I'm worried about with Carlton Davis, he doesn't stay healthy for full seasons. He usually misses about 4 games a year. That's tough, but the Patriots were aggressive. They tabbed him. Terrell Williams knows him, was in the defense with him in Detroit last year. So he knows him better than anybody. But yeah, a little bit of risk here, but I think this dramatically upgrades the secondary and what we're talking about. I mean, they've increased on all 3 levels of the defense, from the line, the linebackers to the secondary. They've gotten impact players and they better themselves. And that goes for Carlton Davis as well.
It's like the good and the bad of signing somebody like Davis. You love the physicality. This is somebody who's going to play really tough against the run, doesn't mind mixing it up, press man coverage, right? You could describe him as far as a cornerback as violent, which is what Terrell Williams loves from his players. But when you play that physical, you play that violent, your body's going to wear down, and you're not always ready to give the team 16, 17 games. All right, let's move on to the next one. Harold Landry. This happened on Sunday night, Greg. $14.5 million a year, $26 million guaranteed.
Look, he's a veteran. He's been in this system. He's performed well in this system. Do I think his best days are behind him? Yes. Does that mean that he can't be effective in this defense? No. I think he's going to help the team. If you're looking for him to be a game wrecker on the outside, I wouldn't say that he is. But when you're talking about this defense and how they approach things, it's basically all 4 guys up front working together with speed. They're looking to create havoc against the run and the pass. When you get now putting Landry in there, you can line up from left to right with Harold Landry, Christian Barmore, Milton Williams, and Keon White. And almost all of those guys, with the exception of Landry, can be moved around the line at any time. They can play different positions. Milton Williams can play every single position on the defensive line, from shade to outside the tackle. Keon White can do the same thing. Barmore can do the same thing. So when you look at, I don't want to look at Landry just by himself, but in the whole package of things. You're hoping Williams and Barmore get double teams. Landry gets freed up a little bit more. I think this is a program type signing. And does it improve the defensive line? Yeah, I think so. But we'll have to see how those 4 guys work together.
What's interesting, a lot of people have talked about this. I've heard Phil Perry talk about it. I think I've heard Giardi talk about it. This idea of the pass rush win rate and how many times Landry has actually won. And the number that I've seen has been under 5% last season. Interestingly enough, Seth Walder of ESPN, he grades each free agent deal. He graded the Landry deal a B+, and he had a different pass rush win rate. Here's what Walder wrote. Landry's win rates have been just okay in recent seasons. His 15% pass rush win rate at edge ranked almost exactly average for a starting edge rusher in 2024. So I don't know if there's a difference in these numbers with outside linebacker versus edge, whatever. But Seth Walder says at edge, Landry was exactly average. So not as bad as the other number would represent. All right, Robert Spillane, the next guy, $11 million a year, $20 million guaranteed from the Raiders. Greg, of course, Spillane. This is a common theme with a lot of the guys the Patriots signed, aside from Milton Williams, is you have a connection to this coaching staff. Spillane has two of them. He started his career with Vrabel, and then, of course, he was a captain for Josh McDaniels in Vegas.
Yeah, Spillane was a guy that we talked about before free agency. I love Robert Spillane. At that price, in my mind, and look, things can change, and they could add other people or whatnot. To me, he's the new Mike for the Patriots. I think he replaces or displaces Juwan Bentley. I don't know what his future is here. I think there's a lot of guys on this team after watching the Titans in action and how much they're predicated on speed and havoc. It makes me question a lot of futures on this defense. But Spillane is, he not great in coverage. I'll say that, but really smart tackling machine. One of the NFL leaders in tackles the past couple of years. Tough. It's interesting. I talked to some people who say, smart and tough. I hear other people say tough, but not that bright. I could just tell you from the film that I've watched of him with the Raiders, I've always loved Robert Spillane. I think he's a good player. Again, I mean, this is a guy that's getting up there a little bit in age. He was with Vrabel as an undrafted free agent. It's interesting that Vrabel cut him in October of that rookie year, did not sign him back to the practice squad. He ended up signing elsewhere after the season.
Right.
But I think he's a really good player and definitely fits what Vrabel's looking for.
It's interesting. Just a couple things from Seth Walder again for Robert Spillane. 39% is the run stop win rate, which was 21st among off-ball linebackers last season. He had a 43% pass rush win rate and actually had 17 pass rush wins, which was sixth amongst off-ball linebackers. In his coverage numbers, you said he's not really good in coverage. Some of the analytics say he was much better last year than his prior years in coverage. We'll see if that stands up. I also wonder, I know you mentioned Juwan Bentley. I look at Jelani Tavai first, and I get the type of player, but Tavai, with the stuff he said about the fans and this team trying to set culture, I wonder if Tavai is the first odd man out when you look at the linebacker room. Just wondering.
I think they're all out. I mean, I think Tavai's only
get him out.
Yeah, I mean, you looked, I watched film of the Titans in week 4 of 2023 against the Bengals. They absolutely shellacked a fully loaded Bengals team, 27-3. Joe Burrow couldn't breathe in that game. At BSJ, I posted the entire defensive game film so people could look at them for themselves. You looked at it, they had, I forget what the linebacker's name was, but there was a white linebacker in the middle. You could see that being Spillane. Now they need to find their, I forget how you pronounce the guy's name. He's now, what team is he on? I'll find it in a second. But I want to say like Azeez Ojulari.
No, Alshire?
Yes. Yeah, he went to the Texans. He's on the Texans now. He signed a big deal with the Texans. That dude freaking flew around the field. So the linebackers, like, they're looking for speed. Like, this whole defense is predicated on speed and wreaking havoc. And any Patriots fan out there listening knows Juwan Bentley and Jelani Tavai ain't that. I could see Tavai hanging on at least for a while on the edge, being like a backup, a role player, fill the gap type of guy. But I think that's questionable as well.
All right, we got more deals to talk about, but first, Greg's got prize picks to talk about.
PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. PrizePicks had made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best way to get action on sports in more than 30 states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. The app is really easy to use to create a lineup. All you have to do is pick more or less on a few player stats for your shot to win up to 1,000 times your money. You could do it across sports, whatever. Pick from baseball, hockey, esports, and much, much more. The second half of the basketball season is here, and the race to the playoffs is heating up on PrizePicks, the best place to cash in on your favorite sports. Don't miss your chance to cash in as the league's best fight for playoff positioning. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that's code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game.
All right, let's do a lightning round here because we're short on time. You got to get to Felgram as we still have a lot to talk about. So the next guy we want to mention is Morgan Moses, $8 million a year, $11 million guaranteed.
Yeah, Morgan Moses, he's long in the tooth, 34 years old, well-traveled, veteran. I like the signing from the perspective of, to me, I read it like the Patriots looked at the market, what was going on with the left tackles. And, Jalen Moore, who was my number one guy from the 49ers, went off the board quickly to the Chiefs for $15 million a year. I didn't think that was unreasonable. Dan Moore getting $22 million from the Titans was ridiculous, and I almost vomited when I heard that.
It's crazy.
It's absurd. Like, I mean, people could be like, well, you could have signed Dan Moore. Like, Dan Moore, this is what stupid teams do. That guy is now one of the highest paid players on the Titans. And I can't wait till some of these players who are good players on this team watches this guy stink up and it'd be like, you're paying that guy $22 million a year. So I think the Patriots looked at it and been like, well, let's make sure we're solid at one tackle. And we've talked about this before. We've talked about it, definitely going into last year's offseason, where you knew they needed help at 2 tackles. And we talked about it. Just make sure in the hands of a capable offensive coordinator, which I know Josh McDaniels to be. And I don't think that Alex Van Pelt was. He wasn't horrendous, but not helping the tackles was something we talked about all last season.
Yeah.
As long as you're solid at one tackle, it doesn't matter which side. As long as you're settled at one tackle, then you know where you have to figure things out. So I think the Patriots looked at it and been like, let's grab a guy in a reasonable deal while we can. Now we have right tackle. It's solid. He's tough. He's durable. He's smart. Not spectacular or anything like that, but a good stopgap guy for a year or 2 until you figure things out. And you give guys like, Caden Wallace and whoever else, somebody that you draft, you give them time to develop because Moses is there. So I like it from the perspective of they got better at right tackle and, now they're solid at least at one tackle spot.
Joshua Dobbs, $4 million a year, $3.8 million guaranteed. I know some are wondering, especially Jordan Schultz, echoing what you talked about back at the Senior Bowl, the idea of Joe Milton, being in discussions, Patriots at least entertaining the idea of dealing Milton. They bring in Dobbs. Yeah,
to me, this isn't that big of a deal. It's not that much money for a veteran. I mean, this is the same type of deal that Brian Hoyer had when Mac Jones was here. Jacoby Brissett was a little bit different. He got paid more money because he came in as the quote unquote starter, and Dobbs isn't doing that here. We know who the starter is in Drake May. But to me, every quarterback room needs a veteran. And this is a guy that Vrabel knows. McDaniels, I don't think knows it all. So we'll have to see how that goes. But we've talked since the Senior Bowl that they could deal Joe Milton. Does Josh Dobbs being here mean it's more likely? Not necessarily to me. I mean, I think that the Patriots still aren't going to do anything stupid, even though I have heard some things about how, um, Joe Milton already. And again, these are just rumors. I mean, I don't have this from um, any definitive source, but that Joe Milton views himself as a starter type, and I think he'd rather start sooner rather than later, and he knows that's not going to happen here. Could he try to force his way out? Yeah. In my opinion, I think that's stupid because if Drake May goes down, and Joe Milton develops and he shows that he can function in Josh McDaniels' offense and he gets the call instead of Josh Dobbs, to me, that's the best circumstance for Joe Milton, where, similar to when Aaron Rodgers got a chance to play when Brett Favre got hurt. That's when the Packers knew. And, whether it's, Matt Hasselbeck, these guys that get traded for, it's these guys that get a starting stint, not week 18 against the Bills JVs. You get a stint, you go out there and you go 3-1. All of a sudden the next year you could pick your destination and teams are forking over a first round pick. So, could he be gone? Yeah, that's always been the case. Does Dobbs being here mean that it's imminent? I wouldn't say that.
I wouldn't say it's imminent, but I would say it's more likely because now you have somebody that can come in as QB2. And, they could have looked at Joe Milton and said, no, you're going to be our backup quarterback this year. That's the plan. And for an emergency quarterback, we'll go out and we'll get an undrafted free agent QB or draft a guy late like we drafted you. And we're going to put some commitment to you as our backup quarterback. They didn't do that. And I think part of it, like you said, is having two younger guys at QB. Now, from Milton's side, you mentioned, he might push this a little bit, and I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I think the Jordan Schultz tweet last night, the way it was worded, feels like an agent leaking to Jordan Schultz, trying to get his guy in a good spot. And I also think, Dobbs, he just turned 25. I mean, Milton just turned 25. So he's older than a lot of second-year quarterbacks. And so he might be feeling a little bit more pressure of that clock ticking to become the guy, with that age situation. So we'll see how it unfolds. All right. Couple quick ones here. Austin Hooper, Sunday, re-signed, $5 million, 1 year, $4 million guaranteed.
Fan, he's good. Gives you that sort of F tight end, works well with Hunter Henry, works well with Drake May. Like the move, and I'm hoping that they add a tight end at some point in the draft.
Wide receiver Mack Hollins, $4.2 million a year, $3.5 million guaranteed.
I love Mack Hollins. Always have. He's not flashy. He's like a 3/4 receiver, but total pro, great locker room guy, leader, tough, blocks his ass off, has played special teams. Sort of a glue guy in the locker room, knows McDaniels' offense, flourishes in it, or at least, to his extent. I think he caught like 60 balls his last full season with McDaniels. I love him. I think fans are going to love him. A little bit quirky. He's the guy without the shoes walking around, but his teammates love him.
You also want to check out Bedard and Giardi at Boston Sports Journal, $50 for the year, tag teaming Patriots coverage. Corrales, of course, on the Celtics. All great work. Also, download the Prize Picks app today. Use code CLNS. Get $50 instantly when you play $5. All right, Greg, we talked about what the Patriots have done. Let's talk about what the Patriots have not done. What is your plan if you're in that front office right now at left tackle?
It's a great question. I mean, in my opinion, there's only two guys left on the market that are worth anything. And how much is arguable. Cam Robinson, who Doug Marrone drafted in Jacksonville, finished up last year with the Vikings, and Jedrick Wills, the Browns' former 10th overall pick. Vrabel was in the room with him last year. Cam Robinson, to me, Nick, the way I read this, I I think the Patriots had some interest in Jalen Moore. I could see him quickly going to the Chiefs. I mean, look, you have the chance to go to the Chiefs. He's a Midwest type of guy. He's from Michigan. So, you know, he took the $15 million from the Chiefs to play with Patrick Mahomes. Not a bad thing. As we said, Dan Moore's contract was stupid for a middling left tackle. Good luck with that, Titans, considering even last year, you really knocked free agency out of the park and really improved your team to a whole 4 wins. A couple different things. I mean, I see this as right now, I would guess that the Patriots and Cam Robinson are sort of facing off over the contract. I think they probably would like to bring him in to compete, to sort of, you know, plug holes before the draft. And, you know, I think that Cam Robinson would be, at this point, a slight upgrade over Bedard Lowe, not a huge upgrade. But I'm sure his agents realize, you know, Jedrick Wills is sort of a turd and nobody really wants him. So Robinson's really the only guy left on the market. So they're probably driving a hard bargain. And if I'm the Patriots, I'm telling them to kick rocks. Like, you could take 1 year at $8 million or maybe up to 10, but that's about it. You want anything more than that? Bye-bye. From what I've heard, I don't think that Vrabel would sign off on Jedrick Wills, even though he looks the part. You could see why he was taken 10th overall. He looks like a franchise left tackle, but nobody really wants him because of his difficulties in the room. He made a quote-unquote business decision last year not to return to play. The Patriots are putting a huge premium on that, on the football character, the guys that they bring in the room. It could be that. Sorry, I just got a text that I just wanted to. Sorry.
That's all right. Sometimes you got to get to those texts.
Yeah, it was a text. I don't know how much I want to say, but about I don't want to say anything because then people are going to clip it and aggregate it. So I'm just going to leave it to the side.
All right. Well, you know, I'm texting you later to find out what the text was.
Yeah. I as of right now, if I'm the Patriots, I go with Bedard Lowe and then the draft. I mean, I think I think at some point in time they'll bring in like a Cam Robinson to plug the gap, but that doesn't mean that you pass on Will Campbell or Kelvin Banks or whatever. I think that you know, it is what it is. I wouldn't get stupid. The Patriots aren't getting stupid with the money just because they have a hole. They have Moses at right tackle. You figure out left tackle and you wait for the draft at this point.
What I don't want them to do is go into the draft and say, we have to draft Will Campbell at 4 because we have to have a tackle, and we hope and pray and cross our fingers he's going to be the tackle. You can't draft at number 4 for need, not with this roster. So that's what I don't want them to do. All right. Speaking of deals, quickly, we got a couple more questions. We got to squeeze them in. Would you have dealt for Laramie Tunsil?
No. The Patriots are not in that position. Basically, you know, the Commanders, because last year they did the sort of middling free agency, sort of the guys that they knew, they did that last year. It's what the Patriots are doing right now. And they knocked the draft out of the park. Hopefully the Patriots get to that point where a year from now they could be in the position to do that. As of right now, they need as many draft picks as possible. They can't give up draft picks for one left tackle. They're not there yet. And so, no, I wouldn't have done it.
All right. What's your plan at wide receiver right now?
I am hoping that somebody at some point, you know, like an AJ Brown, shakes loose, whether it's now or after the draft. Maybe the Eagles dip in, get a receiver, think that AJ Brown's expendable. You know, I'm looking at, you know, maybe some mid-tier guys. I don't know. With the Mack Hollins signing, I don't know if I want to go the Jacoby Myers route now, because now you're talking about like the slowest wide receivers group like ever. I wanted to do that. I was just looking at my list. Well, and Brandon Ayuk. So I would be at some point, and it might not be till after the draft, but A.J. Brown, Brandon Ayuk, Cooper Kupp, when he's released, I would be in on that just to give you somebody. But again, I would be, if it's Travis Hunter, I would be interested in Travis Hunter in the draft being sort of like, my number one at some point. I don't expect him to walk in and be the number one and be a dominator,
Right.
but he'd be pretty damn good. But I think you just got to look at upgrading the room as much as you can.
Couple things, you look at Ayuk, he has that big option about $23 million hitting on April 1st. So we'll see if San Francisco tries to get the hell away from that money. It seems like they want to. They just released Kyle Juszczyk. They're not ripping it down to the studs, but they are just letting dudes go at this point in San Francisco. Also, T. Higgins. When you look at the Myles Garrett contract, everything impacts everything else. The domino effect. The Bengals come out, say we want to pay Jamar Chase as the most, the highest paid player that's non-quarterback in the league. Well, now Garrett just got $40 million. So now you got to go to what? $41, $42 million with Chase. And DK Metcalf, who we'll talk about in a second, he gets traded. He gets $33 million per on the contract extension. So now T. Higgins is looking at it and saying, well, if DK Metcalf's worth $33 million, I'm worth $35, $36 million. So since he's in a tough spot, and we'll see if they can get it all done. All right, let's wrap up with this. Would you have traded for DK Metcalf?
Not for a second round pick, or at least the Patriots' second round pick. The more I looked into DK Metcalf, the more I haven't heard great things about him in the room, his work ethic, things like that. To me, from what I've heard, whether it was DK Metcalf or Devontae Adams, these are guys at this point in time with the program that the Patriots are trying to build, them bringing in a possible diva type receiver was not something that they were interested in.
All right, Greg's got to run. We got to run. We'll talk to you later in the week. Till then, be well.